we go. So I just spent a weekend with Baggers and Brews and 70 of their closest friends on a group ride, and had an outstanding time, and I definitely want to give these guys recognition because I don't think they anticipated the amount of people that showed up for this thing. Group rides in general sometimes can be crazy, right? So before I get into some my take and tips on group riding and kind of what happened this last weekend, I'm going to give you kind of my personal experience, and 95% of my rides are solo. And I've been doing group rides now probably for the last 5 years. And I've done, some up northeast, some down south. I've done actually a couple hog rides. I've did the ride to the wall down in DC, Rolling Thunder. And each ride is different. So like I've gone in groups. Most, the highest with that hog ride or with the one to the DC where there was 300 bikes. But normally my sweet spot on the number of people that I prefer is around 5, 4 to 5. But there's been times when I've had, group rides with 15, 16 people for a sustained amount of time. But this thing happened last weekend, and I want to go over a couple things and kind of my take and what you could learn from it, I guess, so to speak. So this ride, great time, and everything with group rides, there's a couple things that you always have to do. The first thing is you plan it out, and even if like you are expecting 20 to 30, and then you have a jump like they did, like a huge amount of people, you kind of have to adapt on the fly, and the first thing they had to do is kind of like a group meeting in the beginning. So the whole entire premise of this ride was that people were going to come up and go to the pine barrens of southern New Jersey, right? And I guess that's how they get the name. It's kind of barren out some places out there. There's a lot of pines. Not a lot of thought went into that name. But still nonetheless, that area is somewhat dense, and they had areas that were very rural as well. But when they came to this ride, they had a pre-meeting. So when they got up there, they said this key message. And you hear this, it's talked about so much when everybody says, ride your own ride. No matter what, don't risk your safety, ride within your limits, okay? Well, that's nice and all, but sometimes that doesn't work in huge group settings like that. And then second, you're gonna have people, because it's human behavior, and it happens to all of us, that you kind of succumb a little bit to peer pressure, and you don't take a step back and say, you know what, I am going to ride my own ride, and I'm kind of got to back off this group ride and kind of do it at my own pace. Whereas that you might have people that actually want to not be that guy that doesn't join the group. First thing, don't do that. Don't be that person. Learn, okay? So as I've done group rides in the past, because everybody starts sometimes. Everybody's a novice at one time, and I'm no expert by any means, but I've done enough group rides now where I get it, and I kind of know like some of the tips and tricks around it. But don't force yourself. So like over the years, I practice whenever I do group rides. I try to learn different things, and it's made me a better rider. But not everybody is like that. When you get these events like this where, hey, let's invite a bunch of people and we'll do a group ride. Wow, that's great. But you've also got to understand kind of what you're getting into a little bit. So for instance, I know we had a couple people that I guarantee they were overwhelmed. Now, are they good people? Absolutely. Should they have rode with the type of style or type of group that we did? I don't know. I think they might have realized that it might have been a little bit over their heads, which could end up hurting them, obviously, and harming them, and harming other riders around them. So with this ride, we started it where, we visited 6 spots throughout their area, different breweries, and we had a nice lunch. It ended up being like 120 miles. So basically between each stop, it was anywhere from 15 to 20 miles between stops. And the first part of this ride was kind of rural, then it got a little bit more dense, and then there was a lot more people. There were a lot more stops, stop signs, stop lights, so to speak. and it made it a little bit more difficult. But when you have that many riders going all at the same time, and they did a great, and again, I want to recognize them because they did a good job of adapting. You know, they had a leader, which was Bert, the main guy, and then they also had, I think, a group of 4 to 5 blockers when you're riding in that tight. So we're basically just on 2-lane roads most, I'd say 99% of the time. Where, like right now, I'm on a highway, obviously, but you have one road this way and one opposite traffic coming the other way. So when you're doing these rides, you have to be staggered. So you're going to have somebody on the left side of the lane and somebody on the right side. It doesn't really matter. I don't have a preference, but I mean, if I were to say, I'd probably normally stay on the right side. And you have to follow your lines. So like right now, if I'm looking at the way I'm riding, I'm kind of like right on the edge of this white line over here. And I'm going to hold this line. Now, if I'm sitting here, because I'm going to have a rider literally probably anywhere from 5 to 10 feet to the left of me, right behind me. And then there's going to be somebody in front of me to the left of me, probably about 10 feet. Now, if I start doing this and kind of getting out of my line, what's that going to do to the person behind me? Well, they're going to have to slow down a little bit, or they're going to have to adjust. And then what happens is that, let's say he has 50 riders behind him. If he brakes once, then you're going to get the accordion effect. So the best tip I can tell you is hold your line. And just imagine like you're just riding in the center of a line, and then you're maintaining your speed. Because you have to do that when you have staggered formations. And it can be difficult. It can be difficult for people that have never done that before because they're not used to that. And I want to stress this. You don't have to force yourself to be in that position. Now, while it wasn't dangerous, that group ride, it could have been if somebody wasn't experienced, if somebody didn't feel comfortable doing that, because all it takes is you just move over a little bit, and that can cause problems. Now, the second thing, kind of a tip, and it's more my take, and I don't know if there's an unwritten rule about this. So when we're staggered, and so we have the 2 staggered lanes, and then, or 2 lanes, and then you've got the people behind you. We had 2 Can-Ams, not trikes, but we had like the 3-wheelers, or kind of like the bigger vehicles. They should be towards the back. They should be at the back, and the reason is safety. So if you have a motorcycle like my size, and I'm in this lane right here, and then if I had a Can-Am, I would be taking up a lot more of this lane. And if that person moved over just a little bit, you lose that buffer zone. Whereas there's just 2 bikes right now, and there's one like to the left of me, like 5 feet, and there's one to the in front of me, 5-10 feet. That could be the same thing. I'm probably 5 feet's too close, but let's just say 10 to 15 feet. But anyway, if they move over a little bit, your room for error drops considerably. Now, again, I don't know if this is like an unwritten law, because the people that rode those, they're great people, and they actually kept up very well. They were up there, but having that buffer zone just in case something happens, that was great. And one of the great things they did, besides saying ride your own ride, when they did that pre-meeting, was saying, all right, guys, here's our next stop. Put it in your GPS if you don't want to ride. And so that way people could back up. But overall, I think, they did very, very well, but it can be daunting in those dense areas. And then they had a sweeper, and I personally love being the sweeper at my, whenever I group ride. The sweeper is probably one of the most important positions in my book. In smaller group rides, you actually keep the pace up, and then you communicate with the front rider, but more importantly, you're there in case somebody has a mechanical issue, so you can kind of look after them. But nonetheless, get out there and practice. Get out there and learn the hand signals. Learn what each one means. Understand how to ride a line. Understand the type of rider you're with, because nobody wants to get injured. Nobody wants to get wrecked. And most definitely, don't succumb to pressure that you have to be with somebody, because it's not worth it. Hopefully that was helpful. That's just my kind of tips on things and kind of what I do. I mean, I'll continue to evolve and practice every time I'm with, and normally I'm never going to go on rides with 70 people. I'm not. I'm more, but we did it, and at the end of the day, everybody came out safe. Everybody had a great time, and hats off to the Baggers and Brews guys for putting on a great show and having fun, because they honestly did not anticipate that many people, and they adapted very, very well. All right, guys, now get out there and ride and be well, and I'll talk to you guys soon.